public announcement was read when we opened in public at 6 o'clock. We're going to move then on to the public discussion. During the course of the board meeting, the Rockaway Township Board of Education offers members of the public an opportunity to address issues regarding the operation of the Rockaway Township Public Schools. The board reminds those individuals who take this opportunity to identify themselves by name and address and to limit their comments to items listed on the agenda and/or items directly related to the operation of the school district. Issues raised by members of the public may or may not be responded to by the board. All comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming if and when appropriate. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding students and employees of the board are discouraged and will not be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. Members of the public should consider their comments in light of the legal rights of those affected or identified in the comments and be aware that they are legally responsible and liable for their comments. May I have a motion, please, to open to the public?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Cherico. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the board? Now's the time. So please come up to the mic. Please. Just state your name and address for the record.
Patrick D.O., 11 Valley Road. It's just a couple of things I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
The last time I was here, I talked about the school buses, and Dr. McLaughlin responded in general as to the need for the buses that we have. So I went back and forth a couple more times and counted, one time 52, another time 57. But anyway, we got about over 50 buses. But I do pass the school bus garage when the buses are out picking up children to bring them to school, and then when the buses are out picking up children from the school to bring them back. And I notice about a dozen buses sitting in the lot almost every time that I go by. Now I understand that there is a need for spares. But if you have 50 buses and then 12 spares, and the buses aren't cheap, probably my guess is that buses cost at least $100,000 on average each. So if we have 50 buses, that's $5 million. I also noticed in the audit report that we bought some of those buses with bond money, so we're paying for those over time. And so I'm just suggesting to the board that maybe there will be another review, or there should be a review as to the quantity of school buses that we have and the need for so many school buses. I also saw in the audit report, and again, you got to take things with a grain of salt, but looking at the June 30, 2018 audit report, it listed number of employees that are in the school district. And it indicated, I think it was 42 transportation employees. Now I would assume that includes people who repair the buses and maintain them. So I'm wondering that if we have 50 buses and we have 42 transportation employees, my observation of about 12 buses always sitting there is maybe not so far lost. But I'm suggesting that the board perhaps review it, and I would be interested in knowing what the results of the review is in specifics rather than in general terms that we need the buses for repairs. I know we don't get an answer now, but I would appreciate
The answer I can give you is that the board can't do the audit. However, the board can ask the administration to do the audit. So on behalf of the board, we're asking.
And actually, we did take a look into your concern after the last meeting. Would you like Mr. Carlin to share some of the information that you have from our transportation supervisor?
Yes, we had a meeting last week, 2 weeks ago, the operations committee, and I'd like to bring in certain staff members when we have these meetings. And the last time we did it, I brought in the transportation supervisor. brought the concern to her, and you mentioned your comments, and we do need the extra buses, some extra buses for breakdowns and things like that. We also have quite a robust jointure with other school districts. We do their trips. We do some bus runs for them. So we do use those other buses. They might have to leave the bus depot before the other ones get back, so they're kind of passing in the night. We're also currently probably about 2 to 3 bus drivers short of what an ideal staff would be. So if we had a number of bus drivers that we need, and they're difficult to find, we figured we'd have another 3 buses that would be out of that area. So then if you're saying 12, get 3 more bus drivers, as a matter of fact, we just found 1, but if we got 2 more, then we'd be down to 9. Then let's say we need a couple spares. Now we're down to 5. Then you might have a couple that have to go on a field trip for another district. You might have to leave before one of our own buses gets back. So now you whittle those 12 buses down to.
The majority of our buses, our supervisor indicated, are used, but a number of them do leave at different times of the day, so that if you were to pass the depot at a given time, it might look like they were stationary, but they're not. And we use sub-drivers. So those routes that we're short on, that we can't hire drivers for, we have regular subs who do come in for us, and we're thankful that we have them. But we are always on the lookout for drivers. We use some of our mechanics and some of our people who work in the office also will sub for us as drivers to make sure that we can do those routes. So, but they may not show on that audit report as drivers. So that's the piece of this, that will maybe make it fit together. But we're certainly not looking to have, any percentage of buses non-active.
Well, I appreciate your comments, but I still recommend that we do some observation, physical observation, because I go by that garage multiple times, different times of the day, and to me there are many buses that are appear to be overstocked. And by the way, you know where on Green Pond Road there's a deli, I think by Meriden over there. There's a school bus that's parked on Green Pond Road. It's off to the side. It says Rockaway Township School Bus, and it just sits there.
That's not an active bus. That's a bus for crisis. It's a bus you can only use buses for transportation for a amount of years. That bus is there for crisis evacuation and stocked with materials, so that if our students had to evacuate, we would be ready to.
So it's used for spare parts?
Yeah. And not spare parts. It has crisis materials in it. If we had to go to a relocation site for our students, it has signs for the relocation site. It has materials that are needed for that type of, we're required to have that type of preparation for an evacuation, a crisis type of preparation.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because when I drive by and I see this school bus there, and I go, why is this school bus sitting there doing nothing? But anyway, that's my thoughts. I do suggest that we take a stronger look at the need for it's somewhere between 52 and 57 buses, and recognizing that the buses are used for other things, but if you have a bus that's not being used, that could be used for something else. You don't need a bus for every specific activity that the board gets involved with. And like I said, you're probably talking over $5 million worth of buses, and probably about, I think it was about $1 million of bonds, almost $1 million of bonds were used to buy those buses, and we're paying interest on those bonds. And so anyway, that's my thought. I'm new to come to your board meeting, so I hope you appreciate it and have patience with me.
We're happy to see you.
But I did get the agenda, and I noticed that the agenda says "see attached." Well, there's no attachments on the agenda. So I went online and figured maybe click on you know? And so I went to the area of the agenda that says, and there's several, see attached, and I'm pushing. And no see attached comes up. A suggestion that if the agenda says see attached, that either the attachment be available online or be available here, I don't know.
When, at the table, to save paper, we have all the attachments right there for public purview
Oh,
prior
I
to.
wouldn't know that, but I know,
Right.
so there are attachments.
Yes.
There's one copy, so it says do not remove. There's one copy for anybody
Yeah.
who cares to look at the attachments. But they're always here in the back.
That's where they are. One copy to look at,
Yeah, and this
but
one's-
not in advance.
No.
Is there any issue?
No, well, the agenda, as you may know, is not required to be posted in advance. We do post it in advance, and it is so that people know what the topical issues are. We have these available here, and then, of course, if someone ever wants to request those copies, they always can make it.
Yeah, Dr. McLaughlin, I think though, under the Open Public Meeting Act, the agendas are required to be
Yeah,
posted.
we're well aware of it. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
exhausted.
So
Thank you.
anyway, so if I want to see the attachments in advance, I can come to the board office, I guess, and look at them.
Why don't we reflect on that?
Excuse me?
Rather than give you a quick answer, I'll reflect on that request, and we'll get back to you.
Okay,
Definitely report back.
yeah, check on that, I appreciate it. Now, one last thing, I know I'm running out of time. I've run out of time, but I do have.
don't keep time, but go ahead.
No, I did, I was looking at the audit report and the proposed budget. And just a couple, I got a lot of different notes, but it'd take up too much time to go over it. I just want to highlight just one thing though, two things. The student population is expected to go down again, according to the anticipated budget. 2,267 students, which is a drop again from years before. And we've had a steady drop in township enrollment. Right? Well, in spite of that, a couple of things. The proposed tax levy for the coming year is going up, according to what I can see on the website. That the proposed tax levy is $45.3 million versus last year it was $44.4 million. And I'm only talking about operating expenses. I'm not talking about the fact that the total budget is going up also. And then looking at the budget, the audit report, everything is broken down. Very difficult to understand. Right? I also noticed that the average tuition is going up. And I noticed the average tuition for last year was $22,200. That's average tuition per student here in Rockaway. I'd go to Rutgers University for that, maybe less. And the other thing that I noticed, and again, we're all interested in quality education here in the township. With the enrollment dropping, you know what else has been dropping? The pupil to teacher ratio. In 2016, the elementary ratio was 12 to 1. In 2018, it's 10 to 1. 10 to 1. All right? I don't know what it's anticipated to be for 2019, but my guess from looking at all the figures that it's going to go even lower. And so I was interested, and I found on the website that there was just recently, last week, a report issued of all districts in New Jersey as to teacher to pupil ratios. And the average in New Jersey is 12 to 1. So I was interested, what about New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, Massachusetts? Right? And in each of those states, the pupil to teacher ratio is much higher than what we have here in Rockaway. Now, I'm not suggesting that we cut down on the quality of education, but again, when we're in a situation where people in New Jersey are constantly talking about we're getting overtaxed, we're being glutted with taxes, tax here, tax here, tax there, and I've had the same message to the township. And everybody points the finger at somebody else. It's not us, it's the Board of Education, it's the county, it's the state. Well, in my view, it's every aspect of government needs to become more austere and have more of an austerity program, and to see what we can do to help the citizens in Rockaway Township and make it more affordable for us to live here. By the way, also I found the national average for student to teachers was 16 to 1.
So
National.
sometimes, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, that statistics can work, they're meaningless because you don't know what's going into that.
Exactly.
I can assure you we don't have class sizes of 10 and 11. I can tell you that in this district, in terms of class size, teacher to student, the guidelines of the board has always been kindergarten through 2nd grade. We try to cap it at 22, and then grades 3 through 8. Although Copeland's a little bit different because the schedule works differently. But we go up to 25. Copeland goes a little bit higher. When they determine class size, like you're looking at, if they look at the number of students you have and then the number of teachers on staff, that doesn't mean that the class size is necessarily 10 or 11. So I can assure you that we maximize class size as best as we can. We try to keep the neighborhood schools. This is what this community has always wanted. We've looked at we've looked at closing a school. We've looked at combining schools, K2, 3, 5. The community came out loud and clear that they like the community spirit of a neighborhood school. Given that, we have 4 schools that are grouped very close together geographically. We have 1 school that's quite a distance away. You can't redistrict that school, so sometimes those classes might appear a little bit smaller by virtue of how many children live in that area. Then you have Dwyer, which is an open classroom school. If you've never been in it, I encourage you to make an appointment to see it. There's no walls. There are partitions dividing the classrooms, and there is the partitions do not go to the ceiling, so that noise does carry. We try to keep Dwyer class size a little bit smaller by virtue of the physical layout of the school. So I can assure you that we're very aware. We are not trying to go down to 10 or 11 in a class, but I also would encourage you for questions like this to make an appointment with our business administrator or Dr. McLaughlin to go over these questions because they have the information right there to help you. I'm talking from a board perspective.
I will take you up on that
Please
offer.
do, please
Because I
do.
do have some other questions, and I don't want to take up the time of the board. I
That would be
appreciate your
great.
comments. And,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You could raise the microphone.
Good evening. We are Brian Adams and Donna Zirkle, co-presidents of the Rockaway Township Education Association. It is our understanding that the board heard in executive session a plan to possibly privatize and outsource the position of board certified behavior analyst. We have numerous concerns regarding this decision and the timing.
Mr. Scott Buckley, who serves as the district behaviorist, has a variety of roles within the district. Mr. Buckley is a board certified behavior analyst and an expert in the field of applied behavior analysis with over 25 years of experience in the field. He serves on IEP teams as an integral part in advocating what's best for our children. He trains all the staff on how to best teach and address the unique needs of our most vulnerable children. He is not only focused on children with special needs, he also gives input on best practices for general education students who benefit from behavioral interventions.
It's ironic that it's Autism Awareness Month, and we're here discussing saving the potential, the position of someone who has been integral in building and supporting a thriving program since day one. We think back to our staff's previous autism awareness presentations and the success students have had in their maturation and growth over the years. Mr. Buckley is a big part of that. Without the supports provided to the students and staff, that may not have been possible. For those of you who are not completely familiar with the history of our program, our autism program, it began over 15 years ago with an outsourced behaviorist providing behavioral support to our students and staff. Although the program was successfully launched, it became clear based on feedback from parents, teachers, and other professionals that this model was not meeting the needs of our students. In response, the district created the position of behaviorist and hired Mr. Buckley to more effectively meet those needs, to which he has done so in an exemplary fashion for the past 15 years. It seems very unlikely that a return to an outsourcing model would even begin to meet the needs of a much larger autism and special education program, especially by consultants who, in all likelihood, have much less experience and expertise than does Mr. Buckley. We question why this decision would be made right now and seemingly in such haste, when we will be transitioning to another superintendent in only a few months, and our director of special services has literally been on the job for days. Our students need and thrive on consistency, which Mr. Buckley has provided for over 15 years. During that time, we've had upwards of 10 superintendents and even more directors of special services.
Among others, the services provided by Mr. Buckley have saved the district millions of dollars over the years in out-of-district placements and even brought students from outside the district based on the success of our programs. Mr. Buckley has not only provided technical training to teachers and paraprofessionals working with students in need, but has collaborated with and advised administrators on best practices and the ethical treatment of our students, which has shaped our current district policies. His dedication and contributions to our special education programs have been enormous and could not possibly be rivaled by the services of an outsourced agency.
While we understand that there are dollars and cents at play here in the budget season, we already have someone on the job each and every day who is invested in the success of our children. And while you may or may not save a few dollars, we question that the services you may receive from a firm that will have limited time and care devoted to our students. Mr. Buckley is not one to sing his own praises, pat himself on the back, or seek the limelight. Despite his current medical condition and treatments, he is consistently here for our students, providing guidance, knowledge, and the necessary service for our district. He does deserve our thanks for all his compassion to our students over the years, and that is something you cannot put a price on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Betsy Elliott. I'm a member of the Child Study Team here in Rockaway. Just to give you a frame of reference, I don't live nearby. I was home, and the phone started blowing up at 5:15 about this potential contracting out for Scott Buckley's position. So turned around, and here I am. Scott has been here 15 years, as they said. I've been here 13. When I came here and started, I'm a learning consultant. I'm an adjunct professor. I've worked in the field for over 30 years. I've been a behaviorist. I've been a teacher of autism. You do not get any better than Scott Buckley. When I started here and Eric Nixon, I wanted to come here. People wanted to come to Rockaway to work to have their children with autism. This program was built from the bottom up with the hard work and dedication of Scott's expertise and all his years of experience. He built this program. We work as a team, we work as a family. Every year that I've been here, every convocation is we are a family, and I do believe that. In a day in a life, if you are with us every day in the schools, some days are easier than others, we not only support each other, but we carry and lift each other when we need to. And this is one of those times. Because Scott Buckley is an integral presence in our autism program. Not just autism, he started in that, and as it was just said, initially we had consultants. It did not meet the needs of the program. And if you consider 15 years ago and look at what our program was 15 years ago and look at what it is now, it has grown leaps and bounds. Some of the things, and again, Scott, Mr. Buckley, I call him Scott, will not toot his horn. So we have to do that for him. He trains everyone on the ABLES program. He does parent training for our preschool program, for our program at KDN. As the program has developed, he's developed different ways to collect data, how to interpret that data. When you are in a meeting with Scott, you literally sit and are almost mesmerized because that's how easy it is for him to discuss a case and come up with interventions. It is done with such ease and professionalism. Also, he's involved in our crisis prevention program, and then as time moved on, we expanded our program for children with behavior disabilities, our preschool disabilities program. You see Scott everywhere. He's not just autism either. He has been pulled in, and whenever you call him, he comes. Again, he works with you, or he lifts you up to get you through a crisis, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or especially a child. And he does not leave that case until it is resolved. One of the things I would ask you to consider, well, two things. One, if you look at our record, and we're talking about money, look at our record of out-of-district placements for our children with autism. Currently, I'll just throw one out, and we, the Child Study Team, have looked at these numbers of how much we actually save by having this program. You can look upward of a program and transportation of $140,000 per child for autism only. We have had countless cases that we have not had to put a program into a private school for children with autism. And Scott Buckley was a significant part of that success. And because our program is also a success. The last thing I ask you to consider is, again, we talked about kind of like we've come full circle, and also, and you know, I'm not talking about my experience just to tell you it, but to share, even as an adjunct professor, I teach in a graduate university of graduate students getting their special ed degrees. So I get to hear all different things about all different districts. People are having consultants leave and they're having people come back on. They want the consistency. The other thing you have to be careful about is when you hire and contract out, that rate can fluctuate. They can charge you $150 and then go up to $250. And if you don't like it, then you're going to terminate it and go somewhere else. This is going to impact our children. I just really, I understand budgetary, I have all my administrative, you know, I get it. But this really, please reconsider. This is not the place to look for a cut. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now, may I have a motion to close to the public, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Hellborg? Moving on to communications. Have there been any additional since this morning?
No, there hasn't been.
Thank you. Moving on to approve the minutes of April 3rd. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Shields?
Second.
Mrs. Brooks? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Selby?
Yes. Approving the minutes of April 9th. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Cherico?
Second.
Mrs. Brooks? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Cherico?
Yes.
Mrs. Helberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Selby?
Yes. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. McLaughlin?
Thank you. So as was mentioned just a moment ago, April, we do recognize as Autism Awareness Month. And I'd like to share that on Tuesday evening, April the 16th, Mr. Marigon and 3 of our preschool disabled teachers, Mrs. November, Ms. Lezak, and Ms. Masia, attended a school community presentation in Denville that was entitled Triumph Overcoming the Odds. And this presentation was given by Russell Lehman, who is the autistic poet. He is an award-winning and internationally recognized motivational speaker, poet, author, and advocate, and sits on the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. He's written 2 books, the first titled Inside Out and the second titled On the Outside Looking In. Our visiting team reported that it was an informative evening sponsored by the Morris Hills Regional School District, the Believe in Me Association, PASS, CPAC, and Denville Township Schools. All who attended walked away inspired, and I thank our team for being dedicated to their mission and to attending this off-hours program and bringing back the message to our district. On Friday morning, Mrs. DiCarlo represented the district at a ceremony in the newly remodeled Walmart. We have a facsimile check here that Mrs. DiCarlo received as a commitment, and that was $1,500 from Walmart, which will be devoted to the district's safety and security efforts. We appreciate and value our community partners, and we thank Walmart for their support of our schools. Bulk of my report this evening is devoted to a status report on goals which were established by the Board of Education at the beginning of the school year. I have a full copy that I've given to the board, and I'm just going to highlight a few pieces under each goal. Goal 1 concerned communication and creating structures of communication within the district that promote awareness, consistency, and staff input across grade levels and among schools. This year we have created grade level teams among our elementary grades, K-5, and also have appointed grade level articulators and facilitators who have meetings periodically throughout the district for consistency purposes, but also to spur our efforts in our academic achievement areas, looking at curriculum, looking at instructional practice, and the feedback has been wonderful to those grade level facilitators and to the grade level meetings. We look forward to those continuing and being expanded on in the future. Additionally, in this area, we have incorporated a number of items into our instructional council model. Our SCIP representatives now attend from each school. There is a focus by the IC chair and Dr. Tanamian on areas of professional development to support our staff and to lead us in terms of planning for our professional development activities. SCIPs in this area have been clearly defined and are operationally relevant at each of our schools. Our SCIPs are heavily involved in planning for faculty meetings and in school-based professional development, and we are looking to foster even greater growth in that area as we move along. In addition to those activities that were defined at the beginning of the school year, we've had 6 parent forums that were scheduled to allow parents to share schedules. We're completing those 6. We have, I believe, 2 more to go. Those are summarized on our website as they are completed, and the additional meetings are advertised there for those who would like to attend. We have created a district Facebook presence. The district website was revamped with input from our school community. We've made ample use of our Blackboard alert system to keep our public aware at both the school level and district level of happenings and events in the district. 2 paper newsletters, one that has occurred and one that is about to occur, have been distributed through the Neighbor News, and our district Board of Ed meetings are now being live streamed. So all of these fit in under goal number 1. Goal number 2 which concerned instruction and designing a long-range plan for literacy that incorporated teacher input, provided better coaching and teacher training in specialized techniques, have included activities that include a cohort class with Fairleigh Dickinson University, which now involves 8 teachers who have completed their first 2 classes, their graduate clinical classes. Ms. Andrews is our adjunct instructor, and we'll be continuing with those 8 teachers in a second year of cohort 1, and at the same time we are recruiting for cohort 2 so that we can continue to have a robust, ample supply of Fort and Gillingham trained dyslexia specialists in our district. Dr. Tanamian convened a literacy think tank early in the school year and met from September to December, forming the basis for a long-range design for literacy with an initial implementation that began in January 2019, and currently embedded and long-range coaching is underway to help us through the reading workshop model. Units of study have been procured, have been made available to our teachers, and we are ready for the next steps to occur in the coming school year with an exciting literacy seminar that will take place during the summer over 3 days. Goal 3 concerns facilities and security and ensuring that frameworks are in place to ensure student well-being, inclusive of physical security, supports to promote the social well-being of students, and resources for our staff. We began by revising our risk assessment procedure, inclusive of self-harm and harm to other protocols. We joined the Rutgers Behavioral Health group that came to us here at Copeland Middle School, not only to provide services, but also in this assessment activity. Our counseling staff meets according to a regular schedule and under the direction of our Director of Special Services, and that group has been vital in putting together an RTI process that replaced the former IRS process. Those processes have been developed, as I mentioned, into a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 model, also utilizing software, RTI software, that provide a visual display of student progress according to see whether or not our plans on an individual student basis are effective and allowing adjustments to take place in a more precise fashion. Universal screening and benchmark measures have been put in place through DIBELS, and that training is underway for teams in each of our schools, as well as plans for CBM math to form that basis as well. We have worked with our school leaders to provide supervision across the district by coaching leaders on best practices for providing feedback to teachers to support and experience growth. The feedback as planned has been bit-sized and has been provided also to our leaders, our district leaders, through training by Dr. Tracy Severance during our summer administrative retreat and a planned follow-up session, as well as Dr. Barry Erlickson, who really provided a great focus on data and is now working with teachers at KDM School. Observation and performance reports and formal feedback aligned with our framework rubrics have been revisited throughout the course of the school with our school principals, who have also brought them, a number of them, back to their faculty meetings who have done the same. And ongoing professional development about frameworks have also been supplemented by our subscription to the Learning Channel, in which we're able to watch live actual lessons that take place and are being able to be evaluated in time by multiple observers and who can compare their observations to each other and assure greater reliability in scoring. Outside of these goals, I'd like to just highlight a number of other items, and I won't go into them in detail, but I'll just mention them by name. We developed a 2-year school calendar. We've made improvements in our substitute coverage, although certainly there's more to go in that regard. We've focused on communication both within the district but also with our Board of Education to keep the Board of Education as up to date as possible with all that is happening or anticipated in the district. We have adapted to a new email system through Google Email, but also adapting as a district our Google Apps for Education model. One-to-one initiative occurred this year, at the beginning of the school year, at the Copeland Middle School, and that initiative was adopted and put in place and has worked well, and additional teachers have been provided with a portable device. Paperless form process for parents was designed and implemented for this school year to replace the previously mailed out forms that occurred at the beginning of each school year, which also decreases the need for data input by our administrative staff. We've put in place external bus cameras, and we finished our internal camera coverage for each of our buildings with recent additions at KDM and internal cameras that have been purchased and are scheduled to be installed at CMS prior to the end of this school year. Recently, as you know, we joined with the town in a shared service agreement for an SRO who will begin before the end of April here at CMS. And in addition to that, we are on the verge of another shared agreement for Class 3 officers in each of our elementary schools. In the area of safety, we have also implemented the Stop It app and mapping of each of our school in concert with our law enforcement partners. Rutgers Behavioral Health Services, as I mentioned, was contracted and implemented this year at Copeland Middle School and will be supplemented with an elementary provider next year at the elementary schools. Character education was implemented district-wide in 1819. Core values of honesty, empathy, appreciation, respect, and trust were adopted, and these were used to inform a newly constructed code of conduct which will go into place in the next school year. We're pleased to see Stony Brook recognized as a state school of character, as well as DBO as an honorable mention school of character, and we are anxiously awaiting the outcome of consideration for Stony Brook School as a national school of character. Funding was obtained by the Municipal Alliance to fund Girls on the Run program at Birchwood School, and we are enthusiastic about that implementation. We've renovated spaces in the district offices to facilitate increased professional development. That includes our instructional council, our PTC meetings, our think tank meetings, our character education team, and larger meetings of our education committee. We have newly designed our district IT department, and I'd like to highlight in particular the help desk and data management positions that have made a big impact already. We're very proud of the fact that in 1819, the school district once again joined in student teaching and has reestablished student teaching in the district. So that is a summary of the 1819 goals to date. I'd be happy to share a final report with the board at the end of June in regard to the goals and any further information that the board would like to have in that regard.
That's all? That's all you have for us? Oh, okay. Any questions from the board?
I have one.
Sure.
Regarding regarding the newsletter, the paper version.
Yes.
It was asked of me when the first one came out to have a digital version of it, or maybe some way to show it digitally. I don't know if we have a digital copy or scan, because not everybody got it the last time.
Okay.
And people wanted to see it, and
It's a great idea. I'll see if perhaps the folks that we're working with at the Neighbor News can give us something that can be easily transferred, and if not, we'll figure out how to do that.
thank you.
Anyone else? Now we'll move on to the business administrator's report.
Good evening. I am happy to report that the installation of the master clocks has been completed in all 6 schools, and that nice progress is being made on the window replacement at Stony Brook. Our budget is currently under review at the county office, and we hope to get their approval shortly. Final preparations are being made for our QSAC review scheduled for April 30th. At the risk of being redundant, Rockaway Public Schools was awarded a $1,500 grant from Walmart to be used for enhancing the safety of our schools. I was present at the store on Friday, April 12th, to accept the grant as they celebrated the grand reopening of their newly remodeled store. Several items are currently under consideration for these funds, and I will notify everyone when we have determined how we will spend this money. It is my sincere hope that everyone enjoys some time off during the upcoming spring break and takes time to relax before we return for the final sprint to the end of another successful school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. DeCarlo? The question is, where are we with the phone installation? Are we done yet?
No, we're not.
Okay, so where are we?
No, I do have an answer. Answer me, but, we need to get the server moved at the, administrative office. That's really what's holding it up now. The engineer is supposed to be coming out sometime next week to have another look at it, to see how they could move it over the wall and into the server. So, Morris, I'll tell you, our chief technology officer has been on them. We had a discussion the other day. I believe it was just yesterday. And that needs to be done before the phones can be cut over at the central office.
So central office is the last
That's it.
holdout. Okay.
That's it, for the last one, so.
And I would imagine any kind of transfer would be done not during business hours, because that would knock down.
Well, that's another thing we're gonna have to take into consideration now, because we had hoped to do it in the upcoming week when there was more skeleton crew.
Right.
In the district as a whole, so, I'll be in contact with him, and we're gonna have to make sure that it's done at the time, that, isn't going to interrupt
Thank you.
internet service.
Thank you. Anyone
I
else?
wish I had better news.
Yeah, I was just wondering, has the water been retested at KU?
It's been retested, but we haven't gotten results back.
Do we know
It
when?
takes about a month from the time it's tested, so we should be getting them soon.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, are you going to be doing the curriculum report, or we're going to?
There's no curriculum report for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then to committee reports. Anyone?
Operations.
Okay.
The Operations Committee met about 2 weeks ago. I feel like we've met so much lately that I don't know what days are what. And my exciting favorite part of the whole meeting was we invited our transportation supervisor, and she actually showed us footage of what the bus round cameras look like, and they were amazingly clear. You can clearly make out license plates, makes and models of vehicles. I have to admit, I was kind of impressed, considering, I don't know, I just didn't know what I would get. And then she also went over exterior cameras in the buses, and also some challenges we may have had and things like that. So it was a great dialogue and learning about how the safety and security and the camera systems work on our transportation vehicles, especially because, you know, there's no additional staff on most of the vehicles, just the bus driver. And in the end, their job really is to get our kids safely to and from school. It's very difficult for them to, you know, act in other capacities. So again, I always raise my hat to the transportation department and the bus drivers and all of the other transportation staff who works on our special needs vans. It is a thankless job, I am sure. But we have a lot of amazing coverage, and the footage, I don't know, Mrs. Cherico, Mrs. Shields, I was impressed. And the sound is not as bad as I thought it would be. You can hear things. It's a really great resource.
Thank you. Anything else from operations?
We just went over some more budget stuff, talked a little bit about a few security things, but really, primarily most of it was, Joan had come in and we talked about the budget and cameras.
Thank
Great
you.
stuff.
Questions for operations committee? Any other committee?
Yes, policy, we need to set a date. Dr. McLaughlin had provided possibly the 2nd or the 3rd. I know Ms. Smith had said she might be available on the 3rd. And Mrs. Halvord, I don't believe is available.
I'm double checking, but I don't believe I am available on those days. Yeah, I have prior commitments on those days.
Ms. Sherko, are you available on Friday the 3rd of May?
Yes, but it would, yes.
Okay.
So, do you know what time would be good for you? Like, I think you had said earlier, right?
Well, if we could do something during the school day,
I work
you,
on Friday.
but you, okay. So in the afternoon, then I'm just gonna figure out.
I would be available after 3.
After 3, okay.
So,
3:30 good? for you?
Sure.
okay, so why don't we put down 3:30 on the 3rd. You please put on that agenda, the policy that was discussed at the last meeting, I am Ms. Malusak, policy 5200, which is the, yes, the attendance policy.
Any other committee reports? Education will be meeting on April 30th. Yes. Thank you. And bus driver negotiations, even though schools are closed, we're coming in Monday evening. We will be doing that beginning, I believe the board is meeting at 4:30. Negotiations is starting then at 5:30 with the Bus Drivers
I
Association.
have to bring up one piece, I'm sorry, about April 30th, and it might have been an oversight when that date was offered. That is CUSAC. Lately, the CUSAC reviews have been running till 5 o'clock in the other districts. I don't know what time
We had 5 o'clock.
okay, so it should be okay.
Yeah,
It should be okay,
later
just want to make
time.
sure.
I believe you couldn't come till later.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't
so
still
we
be till after.
our normal time is 4.
So if we had to bump it to 5:30.
I'm fine with that also.
That,
Try to do 5:30 then, or?
I'm flexible.
as long as it's after
Your
5.
call.
It's Dr. Tanami's meeting, so I'll mention it to 5:30.
Just 5:30. Great, thank you. Okay, if there's no other committee reports, moving on to recommended for board action. The first section is personnel. It begins on page 4. It ends on page 6. There is no public discussion allowed by law. All discussion was held during executive. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Smith? Thank you. When you're ready, Mrs. DeCarlo, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes. Motion passes. Moving on to HIB determination. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Shields?
Second.
Mrs. Brooks? Dr. McLaughlin?
We have no new HIVs this evening. We're voting on an unconfirmed that we discussed with the board at its last meeting, case number 31.
Okay, so the motion then is to affirm that HIB case 218-31 is unconfirmed. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to education, beginning on page 6, ending on page 7. Sort of. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Cherico, board discussion. Any questions from the board? If not, I can open to the public if anyone has a question about any items in education. If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to special education, beginning and ending on page 7. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Shields. Board discussion. I just have one clarification. I know that we continue to, I know that sometimes we hire our own teachers for bedside instruction. Do some facilities require that we use their staff to do bedside instruction?
Sometimes it's either required or it's more conducive.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further board discussion, I can open to the public under special education. If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to administration, beginning and ending on page 8. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Cherico. Board discussion.
no more discussion, I would like to just ask for clarification. I know we received information about the Donors Choose donations. Can you give us a little bit of background about how that
Donors
occurred?
Choose is a teacher-driven program where individuals can, through a website, can advertise innovative areas that they'd like to implement in their classroom, and then people fund that site. And sometimes there are funding sweeps, where someone will come in and fund all of these initiatives at one time. Those should be, because they are grants and they are used in the classroom, they should be accepted. And as you can see, we've had quite a lot of activity at Birchwood from our teachers there in that regard, and we've also had some from Dennis B. O'Brien. So we thank our teachers for taking that initiative. It's all on their own, and that's being implemented for a variety of different types of programs that the principals review.
That's great. Please extend the appreciation from the board. That's wonderful. I can open to the public if anybody wishes to make a comment under administration. If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Helberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to finance, beginning on page 9, and I believe it ends on page 10. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Cherico?
Second.
Mrs. Brooks? Question for the person who checks the purchase orders.
I did do those yesterday.
You can speak.
I did them yesterday morning, and I just had a couple questions that Mrs. DeCarlo was going to answer back to me, but everything, once again, looks good.
So your recommendation is for them to approve?
Absolutely.
Okay. Further questions from the board? If not, I can open to the public for finance. 1 second. May I have a motion, please, to open to the public?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Smith? Mr. Dio, please.
Thank you. This question, what is this, the travel? Who's traveling, and what is it all about? And how much is it costing? Thank you.
You want to take that question back to the public?
Sure. Ultimately, the travel expenses are twofold. They're either individuals who go out of the district for professional development activities, might be a specific conference, and it is embedded under travel. The other piece is we have individuals who travel throughout the district in the course of their duties. So some individuals have multiple schools that they travel to. We have some of our administrative staff who travel. We have some shared staff who may travel during the day when we share, for example, perhaps just to pick a title like a media specialist or a child study team who are in different buildings, and they submit mileage for that.
And it is governed, the amount is governed by the state of New Jersey. I don't know the
31 cents a mile.
31 cents a mile, that is the state imposed limit what you can pay. And I believe if someone does go to an overnight conference that's approved by the board, the state also limits how much money you are allotted for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and for any kind of accommodations, and anything not covered, then you personally have to cover that. But the state does impose regulations on that. Any other from the public? Anyone else under finance? If not, may I have a motion to close to the public?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks and Mrs. Cherico, and may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Helberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to policy, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mrs. Brooks?
Second.
Mrs. Shields? Policy
The
chair.
only policy that is on for tonight as a second reading would be policy 8462, reporting potentially missing or abused children. We needed to put this on, if you remember from the last meeting for CUSAC, it was just a wording change. Or I should say designation change.
Designation change, yes. Any questions for the policy committee? If not, I can open to the public. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Chirico?
Yes.
Mrs. Hellberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Mezak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shields?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Salmi?
Yes, motion passes, so that policy is now live. Moving on to old business. Any board member have old business?
I do.
Okay.
At the last, meeting, so a member of the public, Mr. Deo, am I pronouncing? You had asked a question about, policies that would be applicable to your concerns for policy 3310 academic freedom, and whether or not there are any more of them. I printed out a copy for you, but they are on the website, just to let you know what they are. It's policy 2240, controversial issues. Policy 2270, religion in the schools. Policy 3230, outside activities, which we just approved, actually, past month. Policy 3233, political activities, which we approved last month. Policy 4230, outside activities. Policy 4233, political activities. Policy 5520, disorder and demonstration. I don't believe I've overlooked any, but I will give you a copy of all the ones I found there. I did notice I did print them in very tiny prints. You might need a magnifying glass, but you know, right?
Thank you. Anyone else, old business? If not, I'll bring up the superintendent search since we announced the plan at the last meeting. Last night, the board started its first round interviews. We had 32 resumes received that we vetted, and of the 32, we are conducting 13 interviews for the first round. We have, I believe, the second night of the first round will be next week, and at which time we would decide how many would then come to the second round. You can expect a letter from the board probably the last week of April, at the latest, the very beginning of May, with more details about the day and the afternoon and evening in the district on May 8th, where all stakeholders will have an opportunity to meet the final candidates. But we can't write that letter yet because we're not sure how many finalists we're actually going to have. So please stay tuned for that. New business.
On April 4th, I attended the KDM Autism Awareness Student-Teacher Basketball game. I have to admit, I was a little biased to the Orange Squad. My little guy was on that. And even though I think the scoring was a little sketchy, but the students did win 100 to 88, so.
The scoring is never sketchy.
It was a fun night, and the teachers and the kids were all great sports. It was very enjoyable.
It's great, I got to see some of the pictures, so I wish I was there. Anyone else? Sure.
I had the opportunity this past week to take a tour of some of the buildings I'm a little bit less familiar with, so I wanted to take the time to say thank you to Dr. McLaughlin and also thank you to the building principals who took the time to meet with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Messick.
Yes. To echo Ms. Shields, I attended the KDM Autism Awareness basketball game. It's a school that's kind of near and dear to my heart since my child was in that program. I just want to say thanks again for everything KDM does in their program. Secondly, this would probably be I was going to give it to Dr. Terminian, but unfortunately he's not there. I have noticed that the Morris School District was conducting or I should say participating in an event. It's the You Be the Chemist program. There's a lot of professional development that helps the K-8 educators implement hands-on science activities. It's free. This might be a great thing for us to bring in. There is a challenge. So I printed out information. So hopefully we can add that in.
Sure. Thank you. Anyone else? At this time, I can open to the public if anyone wishes to address the board on any issue. If not, then the board will be going back into executive session for superintendent board relations, for legal, related to grievances and for the superintendent search. We will be coming out to close, however, no decisions will be made. There'll be no further actions taken, and we're going to be in there, we have quite a hefty agenda, so we will be involved there, but thank you so much. If you want to wait, it could be 10, 11 o'clock, that's your option, but no further action will be taken. We thank you so much for coming. May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session?
So moved.
Mrs.
Second.
Brooks and
Second.
Mrs. Hellborg, that would be at 8:36 or 7 by our new clocks. Thank you very much.
Hit the red button.